Good?
Yep.
Okay, it's 7:01. This meeting is called to order. This is the January meeting of the DHCA Board of Directors. Present are Ms. Wyndham, Ms. Berg, Mr. Brandenburg, Ms. Ragland, Ms. Hugh, Ms. Carlisle, Ms. Lyson, Ms. Me, and Mr. Brandenburg. And that is a quorum. Did I miss anybody?
Nope.
May I have a motion to adopt the agenda that's been distributed? Any modifications? Without objection, it's ordered. We have no police and fire or city of Atlanta. Let's go right to the planning committee and the variances.
First on the list is Matt here?
And he's not here, so keep right on going.
Okay, so we'll go to Hudson Drive, B14 268 1069 Hudson Drive. And it's Claudia Hebert, and will you go ahead and just talk through your application and what you're seeking to get scheduled for?
Sure. We moved in March, and my 86-year-old mom lives with us, and there's a cottage on our property that there's no way she could access without a ramp, so we hired a builder, a contractor, and he built a ramp, and unbeknownst to us, he didn't get a permit, so that's why we're going through this process. That's really about it.
So the actual variance that you're requesting is that on the east side yard setback, you are, where you should be 7 feet required, you're at 4 feet. And we were there for site visits, and you're doing some things to mitigate the ramp.
You're going to want to explain this yourself at the next
Yes.
meeting, so go ahead, it's your practice.
Yes, I have, we have purchased, we've spoken to the neighbors, sent notes to the neighbors, and we are planting Arvida plants there, and we've already purchased them. I'm still waiting for the landscaper to install them, but they're here, and I have pictures of the yard, and I have pictures of the plants, so if you'd like to see them. I have a copy of the site plan. I think Jack has a copy of the site plan, and I sent one to her also. So,
Nonetheless,
actually, I had it. Anyway,
what's the date stamped on the site plan, please, Claudia?
the date on the site plan, I think it's November 26th.
Got it, that's correct.
November 26th.
That's correct. Okay. So the plan shows the trees on there, the neighbors have been notified and agreed.
Yep.
There's no one here, anyone here else wants to speak on this? And I think we have resolution in the process of this. I think you made your rear carriage house and you switched your duplex status from inside the house to...
That was my fault.
No, that's not your fault, that's your
It
great
was default.
huge advantage.
Mhm.
And anyway, I just mentioned that because it's now a non-conforming, it was a non-conforming duplex that referred to 2 apartments in the building. Now it's a non-conforming, legal non-conforming duplex with a legal carriage house in the back and a single family in the main structure. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
All right. I think we looked at this. The neighbors are satisfied to the best of our knowledge. No one is there anything else to comment? So, do you want to make a motion?
Sure. Move to approve, recommend approval of B14 257, based on the site plan stamped and dated November 26th, and conditioned on knowing that the actual lot coverage, the accurate lot coverage is 44.88%.
That is the correct lot coverage now, correct? And Debbie, I don't know if there's a way we can get that in. It wasn't, I don't, did you refile the front page of the application and list 44.8% on that?
Yes, when I went back in.
Okay. So the lot coverage is 44.8%. All right, is there a second for this motion?
Second.
Any further questions or discussions from anyone?
Jack, is the 44.88 the current lot coverage?
Yes, that is the
Okay.
current lot coverage.
Which includes the ramp.
Includes the rent. It's a very big lot. All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. It is unanimous, so we'll see you a week from tonight. Debbie is the new NPU chair, and I just want you to notice how fast and smooth this was. Just compare it to next week. On to Debbie.
We're actually fast.
Is it a competition?
He does usually say we're
Not a bit, but they are often as fast as we are, but often it doesn't begin quite at 7:04 p.m. all hours. But nonetheless, thank you. We're joshing with Ms. Kapinski. Congratulations on your election. Thank you.
Okay, I'll leave.
You're not leaving now, are you?
Are you really happy then?
No.
No.
Go home, enjoy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Her name is not Kapinski.
Because Chinsky.
Yes.
Now you
Yeah, that was so much smoother when I feel much better.
She demonstrated how to say it for me.
I think Debbie and I have made peace about this.
I'm still unhappy.
I'll work on it. I'd like to get last names right. All right, Lola.
Okay, we'll go on to V14, 30914 Highland View with applicant Jean Valley for Marcel Back, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, this is Marcel Bax, he's the homeowner on Jean Valley, and this is variance for 14,300. What they're seeking to do is reduce the side yard setbacks. It's a non-conforming house as it is, and you're building a second story to the house. I do have the stamped surveys that you asked for last week, and last week I have 4 copies.
I think we can just have one. We can keep them for the,
So you're required, could you go through them? I think you're reducing both sides of our function.
Yes.
So by west and east, if you would.
5 on 9 on
The west.
the west side and 6.2 on the east side from 7 feet. And the front yard setback will be reduced from 35 to 33.1.
All right, three of those. Is that to do what?
To build a second story straight up.
Yeah, in the existing footprint. Okay, we
Yes.
did a site visit. I think everything went swimmingly. There are no stormwater or tree issues. There's a broken pipe in the front that we know here, but you're gonna fix that. It's not part of the conditions, but you will. That'd be great. Any questions or comments for anyone from Mr. Bax or Ms. Valley? Or is it the Lee?
Valley, just valley.
One for two. So, all right, I think it's really great, and I thank you for, again, your good humor when we showed up without apparent prior notification for the site visit. That was, whatever, come on in. Thank you for doing that. Is there a motion, Laura?
sure, move to recommend approval of V14, 300 based on the site plan stamped and dated December 17th, 2014.
Now, we had to have, however, weren't you providing a new stamped plan similar to the identical?
I brought,
You just did that, I'm
Yes.
sorry. 12, what's the date? I'm on it.
17.
12/17. Thank you for doing that.
my pleasure.
Is there a second? All right, second. Any comments or questions from anyone for the applicant or the owner? Absent that, all in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you very much.
Good luck and you get to see real democracy at work. Okay, thank you so much.
So,
I think we're finished. As I see, that's the bottom of the two things.
Matt, V14, 257, we've got, Matt has two, he's just giving you a hard time.
I know, I deserve it today. It's been that kind of day. I'm actually looking forward to this for the rest of the day.
That's a scary proposition.
Yeah.
So we'll, which one do you want to do first, Rosedale Road or Barnett?
We can do Rosedale, that's fine.
Okay, great.
Wait. What was the first one?
The first one was V14, 268 Hudson.
It-
We skipped
Oh,
that.
okay.
It's on the back, the second one on the back.
Okay.
Run.
There
you're good, I'm just gonna leave this.
From Rosedale? Okay, so Rosedale is pretty simple. We're making an existing deck, which is non-conforming by about 3 feet. It's about 3 feet over the side yard setback, which is 7 feet. And an exact same footprint, no bigger, no smaller. We're rebuilding that and adding a roof and some screening to it. So it's still outdoor living space, except it's going to be a screened porch instead of a deck. We don't have any lot coverage issues, no trees are impacted, and it's a pretty simple one right there. So it's just a side yard reduction to 4 feet on the south side of the property. And I brought some, and I got a new set of, I got the new survey.
Yeah, this one, January 12th, that you emailed?
Yes, that's today.
That's today, that's right. And then letters you have.
Yes, and these are the, my ops manager is scanning right now to send them to me. Those are all the addresses. These right here are all owned by the same, or maybe 3 owned by the same people. That's I think they're in Decatur, and so we actually sent all that to the same
Okay.
address to them. I guess the people that are managing it.
So you'll send proof of mailing or?
Yeah, it
copy
should be
letters?
in my phone in a second now.
Okay, just really get that.
She was having some car problems.
Okay.
Matt, what is the lot coverage on this?
The lot coverage on this one is, all impervious space is 44.88%, I believe.
What did Claudia just say her lot coverage was?
44.88.
Wow.
I didn't make that up.
What are the chances that we have
Well, yours
2
says
to the 10th?
I go out and buy a lot.
But we changed,
40%.
we made the adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like one part of the survey.
Really, his next one
Okay.
is also.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, yours
This
is,
one's the same plans, we just,
Okay, so we got this one done. We did go, no, there were no tree issues, as Matt said, no stormwater issues, very little alteration, all is well, as best we can tell.
and I keep
So
this.
what neighbor are we missing, Lola? Is there,
What neighbor are we?
are we missing anybody? We've got all the neighbors, are we good?
Yes.
I
Okay,
think we had it.
got it. And Matt overdoes it quite often. All right, the required neighbors are in, solid. Is there a motion, Lola?
So move to recommend approval of B14-257 based on the new site plan stamped and dated January 12th, 2014. And 15, thank you. And conditioned on receiving actual proof of mailing or letters from these addresses.
Wait, we still don't have, there's someone missing.
He's going to send the actual scan. He's given us a list of the ones that have been notified,
Okay.
but we don't have that.
Okay, good enough, got it. Is there a second? Any questions at all for the applicant? From the vast North American viewing audience, anyone? All right, let's all in favor, please raise your hand. Are you not voting, Ms. Keenan? Thank you. All right, it's unanimous.
I'll see you in the parking lot.
On to the next one, sir, please.
Hey,
All right, the next one is V14-258 on 898 Barnett Street. And this is a single-story bungalow, which we are basically converting to a 1.5-story addition. The addition is going to rest on the existing footprint, existing house. We're not expanding at all. No trees are impacted. The fence that has a previous variance on it is not impacted. We're not touching the garage. It'll probably follow on its own. We're not doing any landscaping. So basically, we're just doing a half-story addition on the existing house. Now, when you're looking at the front of the house, and I brought some, I think it's scanned over the images to you. I brought over some, so the front of the house, we're adding a small gable. We're going to keep all of the existing architecture of the house intact. On the side, we've got some existing gables and dormers, we're keeping those as well. So the addition is just going out the back. Our new ridge line is not going to extend above the current ridge line. We're not impacting the chimney or any of the other features of the house. We're trying to make it where you look at the front of the house, you can't tell that there's an addition on the back of the house for what we did.
Well, we did a site visit, you were there, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so there's only trees and they're not impacted by the construction on the side on Ponce Place, and they're gonna be fine, they're remaining, they have to have the yard set, and there are no runoff issues. And Mr. Bullock particularly thought it was a good design, thank you for that. Is there a motion?
Recommend approval of V14-258 based on the site plan stamped and dated 10/22/14, conditioned on actual proof of letters mailed to these residents.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any questions at all for the applicant? Anyone wondering, only one more meeting to actually.
Please.
All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you, sir. So we'll see you next week.
Thank you. I went to the city this morning, it was pretty funny, like, there was nobody there.
Because of the weather or the,
I think, I don't know. They didn't know what I was, but it's like, there's no lines, there's nobody there. It was great.
It was kind of weird.
Took me 2 seconds to get that snapped.
awesome, awesome.
Don't
Thank
worry
you,
about it
Matt.
too much.
That's what happens when you only pay for 30 minutes to park and you get out. Bye, have a great evening, thank
I
you.
wouldn't touch that theory next time, but okay. Thanks, Matt. Let's go on to master plan recommendation. Ms. Wyndham and Ms. Carlisle.
Kick it off. So we've met, the steering committee met again, I think it was late November, just to sort of reconvene and figure out how to implement some of the bigger items from the master plan. And so I think we'll be discussing, we've discussed like, okay, which line items or which recommendations need committees, which could we do individuals, which need community effort. So there's been discussion and just strategy behind how to approach it and what makes the most sense to recommend and which makes the most sense to pursue. So I think the next steps are going to be looking in the budgeting process for what we want to budget in the planning committee's budget for 2015 and figure out more details there as we go along.
So of those, there were several action items to come out of that, which were some things, straightforward and easy to approach, and then others that take a little bit more time and process. So that's where we're taking some time to just come to the board with some scope and process recommendations for some of them. So we had, store drain signage, consideration and research on eco-districts, watching and following the bond monies for the Monroe Road Diet and roundabouts, and then bike lanes, and some parking kind of discussions, and also potential overlay zoning to manage a little bit of scale and mass. So again, some of those have a short-term kind of approach, and some will be a longer term. So we're looking at these within, from now to, I'd say, 18 months from now to follow through. So just listen out for more information from us, but we wanted you to go ahead and know that the steering committee and everybody is certainly excited about the master plan and implementing a lot of the items that came out of it. Mm-hmm.
So when are you going to start working on the overlay zoning?
We are getting, talking about the process and proposals in phases so that we will, I hope by the next meeting, we'll have that in detail enough to bring, first we'll talk about it in the planning committee, make sure we're comfortable with it, and then make a recommendation to the board. So
Well, every day they tear down another house out there, so.
that's, yes, we want to move.
It's urgent.
Move very quickly, but also carefully, and make sure that we have a phased approach so that the neighborhood can have input, and we know that, because we will be spending money to write those, and to have a neighborhood input process, and that we have it phased in such a way that we can take that input and take it to the next phase.
Well, actually, I think people are beginning to get it now with overlays on it. I think they'll support that where they wouldn't have supported historic district or,
And I get, when you, it's
They know every time that someone builds a new house out there, that their house gets less valuable and gets to be worth whatever the lot is worth.
So yes, we'll hope to move very, very quickly. Just, I think that in the time frame that we're thinking about, I mean, that'll be the best. It'll be a good solution and the best we can do, because we also don't want to move too fast.
Yeah, because that always scares people.
That's it on that.
I want to report very briefly on the public meeting that was held last night on the tree appeal, and the tree work that's going on at Inman. Jennifer and Lola and I attended this on Clemont. It was a well-attended meeting. There was a wide variety of reactions from citizens that knew virtually every detail of the history for the last 15 years there, to some that knew virtually nothing of any of them, or brand new to them. So it made for a wide range of opinions and reactions. I think it's safe to say that no one's in favor of any of the trees coming down. And I think it's accurate to say that the steering committee that we're a member of has not met or been convened since last May. And we were distressed and disappointed to see, just before New Year, trees be marked. We were particularly surprised by a large number of trees being marked on the, what I will call, for want of a better term, the softball field. And so in the last week and a half, we've spent a lot of time trying to understand the exact reasoning that went into all of it, and it's been an adventure finding that out. I mentioned to Jennifer today that it felt like we had done the work of the steering committee that hadn't met for 8 months. We don't convene that, by the way, the school board does. We tried to cram it into a week and a half. What we've discovered briefly is of the 20 trees that are coming down, about half of them are in and around the active construction zones near Park Drive and Clemont. The driveway in Clemont is being removed, as we knew. So construction goes there at the very end of that driveway. And virtually every mature tree down that driveway is scheduled to be removed. It's quite close to the construction, and some of them are already compromised from previous construction jobs and bravely hung on. There's several trees coming down along Park, mostly all occasioned by the addition of the very well advertised 2 bus lane cutout that will accommodate special ed students. Those were not a surprise to those who had been in the committee. They were a surprise to a couple of citizens who lived nearby and had not followed the process to this point. They're very upset about it. And then there are trees along Virginia and along the ball field that we were surprised about. As everybody, I think, knows, we had proposed that one amenity that could accrue to the community from this would, at the end of this construction, would be the removal of that rusty old backstop that was there and its replacement with a tailored and carefully designed set of fencing and granite walls that would resemble, in large concept, what we have across the street and what is at the Georgia Power Station. That we had offered to pay for a substantial portion of the design for that, as we understood the dollars were very tight in the APS budget. We had proposed, as everybody knows, using Spencer Tunnell and or Peter Frawley for those purposes. And we had been told that that was a year or more down the line at the very end of the project. In any case, it appears to our surprise that while that a ball field, quote, quote, has been designed in there, it is a very large ball field, a very standard ball field using standard dimensions with no attempt to tailor to the condition-specific situation at the field. It's a very incomplete design, but a very large design. As a result of the design, it appeared, which as best we can tell, was done without the folks who did it being aware of any community desire or feeling about the trees or anything else in there, since we weren't part of it, nor any of Frawley nor Tunnell. that they've rather crudely described a very large area for grading, which we had never contemplated, since the grade is generally perfectly functional right now. We're surprised by that. And that grading means, as a result of the grading, that a great many trees are disturbed in their critical root zones, hence they need to come out, all for the ball field that we had designed, that we'd requested, supposedly. This is not the ball field we'd requested. We had never asked. We had many priorities about this, including the look and function of the surrounding field. That's one concern. It's one we share vibrantly. Another concern many neighbors had was the likely end result of whether the, quote, so-called, and I say it for reference, dog park that's very popular beside the ball field would eventually be fenced. School boards talked about it periodically. They use it primarily for assembly for fire drills, but when that happens, sometimes kids step in. Dog feces that are widely distributed around the field, and they continue to be, in spite of many neighbors' efforts to keep it clean. And I think those are the major issues that we face. So we're trying to figure out it took a long time to figure out what the assumptions were that were driving the removal of these trees. I've condensed a lot of information we gathered. Lola and I met with the Director of Facility Services there last Tuesday. He did not know the answer to the questions. And we were any of these questions and said he would refer us to their civil engineer, which we have not yet been referred to that. We'd love to talk to that person. Nonetheless, he also suggested maybe we could ask Ms. Bachman, the principal, who's been great and very informative and cooperative with us. She's a big advocate for her school, but she's always shared information openly. The next day, I went to Tennell & Associates and posed the same grading questions. What is going on here? And they averred that something was missing from this plan. Some design goal had been omitted from this table. I then caught up to Bachman midday, who accommodated us on very short notice. A request made at 5 till 5 the day before she left her office. And she stuck us in the middle of the day. And in the course of this conversation, as we talked about where the staging area for the construction would be, we had been told from day one and told on the very day before by the APS official that it would be on the Field of Dreams, which has caused what we thought would be yet another delay in being able to fix the Field of Dreams. She mentioned that she had been given the month before, not in an expansion committee meeting, the option of moving the parking that currently exists along Virginia to either the ball field or the Field of Dreams. And that was, we were stunned to hear this. Nobody mentioned any of this. It turns out that the staging will indeed occur in the existing parking lot of Virginia, which makes a great deal more sense from a construction point of view. But we were stunned to hear of any parking on either location because it had not ever been mentioned. Seems like one of the things you might do with an expansion committee is it's designed to deal with the impacts on neighbors. Stunned is the politest word I can come out with, but I will say this, that she had been told that it would either probably be a paved temporary lot, that asphalt might be applied to either one of those lots of her choice. She, of course, picked the softball field because she's trying to deal with PE needs, phys ed needs, and practice needs, and the Field of Dreams is bigger. So, given the choice she was presented with, she made a logical response. We were pretty stunned. It did explain why there's a new drain line under the softball field, why there's grading on the softball field. All the trees, all of this began to make sense, but it also suggested and raised the real possibility that this had been contemplated by APS. I do not say that it has, right along, and there's no question that none of it was ever conveyed to anyone on the expansion committee. When all this went on, I checked repeatedly, 3 or 4 hour by 3 or 4 hour period as we learned new pieces to make sure that no one had learned and been apprised of any of this. They had not. Absolute clarity on this point from every person on has never met, no one's ever heard. So eventually on Friday, I wrote a letter, I have a copy of it down there, we can pass around to them, and said, and asked for three things. One, that they remove all the trees on the field from consideration for immediate removal, including the two down Virginia, which, as it turns out, are imperiled because of all the stormwater being engendered by scraping the field and removing the trees. So now we need to install a brand new stormwater line down Virginia to accommodate this. This is just a series of dominoes, one bad one after the other, falling down here. Remove the proximal cause of all of it, the removal of the trees, and reduce the grading, and there goes the stormwater, there goes the line, there goes the two trees down Virginia. And so there, we had a conversation with Mr. Smith and the project manager very late Thursday afternoon, or I did, and Mr. Smith knew none of this, he swore. And no, I told him it was an interesting, it was whatever. So I spoke eventually to the woman who's the project manager, and we had a difficult conversation in which I expressed my disappointment at the absence of communication, the failure of process, the assumptions that were driving this, the failure to involve us in the design, the way to take the germ of an idea that we had of making a field better and more handsome, and running madly in a direction that nobody had ever contemplated without any community involvement. I think that sums it up, sort of. And there were a variety of other reasons offered, and they did not meet the credibility test, as I think we both resolved quickly. In any case, we have a meeting with APS in the next 24 hours out there on the site. Lowell and I are going. Chip is going to try to attend, but more importantly, we've invited, and they will attend, the two chairs of the steering committee, because the thing that's disappointed me the most has been the attempt to just deal with this privately by APS, and now to try to resolve it privately with us. Our concerns need to be addressed, but the process, we've always believed in it and tried to stay behind it, and it's let us down. So I don't know what's going to happen. The appeal deadline is Wednesday. Today, we were able to consult another arborist. Both Tom and Stephanie Coffin had looked at the trees all around. They were puzzled by the trees we were puzzled by, as Chip was. They thought the trees by the building were certain to go as products of the construction.
Where
The expansion, where the expansion will go.
I thought that, and also where the parking lot's gonna go.
That's right.
That's
They all
a
thought,
big tree. As soon as I saw that in the master plan, I thought, man, it's gonna take a hit.
that's
On
right,
those big trees over there.
that's right. This was an issue of contention with a few neighbors last night. Many of them got it. Some of them swore up and down that this ridiculous and unpopular expansion, that we merely needed to lead a popular revolt against it, and we should appeal those trees, and one citizen was very adamant on it. I told him that our belief, and my belief, but the planning committee's belief, but the board would consider it, was that it made no sense to appeal a decision that we had known was coming, that matches the fabric of it, that has been long since resolved, the decision to expand. So the trees around the actual building, we would not appeal. The ones on Park, we would not appeal, because that it was as described. However, we felt very differently about the ones on the hill. There's been no discussion of those ever going, and we want them saved. And we left it there. Today's arborist was from ArborGuard, which is the generally most aggressive tree-saving arborist in the firm. He's worked closely with APS. Eddie Rivers at Candler Park. He has a long resume in water and tree issues at Georgia Tech and the Botanical Garden. He will write a brief note tomorrow. He didn't expect every tree, but he did say he saw no viable grounds for appeal or for saving any of the trees around the building, as we had said. He validated and expanded on some of the assumptions on the field, and I think that we do have an appeal to argue that there is a real alternative design that can go forward. So I'd like to ask the board for its support in appealing the trees on the field and the two subsequent ones down Virginia that follow that. The cost is $100 and a lot of our time. We may, maybe 75. We may employ additional professional help in the appeal, which will be a month off. It will at least keep the issue alive. Because in our letter, we asked 3 things: that the steering committee be convened right away, that those trees be removed from the list right away. When I broached that to the project manager and to Mr. Smith, they both assured me there was no imminent danger of those trees coming down, so we should relax. And I said, agreed, said that was outstanding news, and that therefore there was no need to permit their removal because there was no need of their imminently coming down, and then that would really make us all relax. He didn't agree, hasn't agreed so far, but I'm hopeful that he will.
So it was the principal that got the choice of where to park.
Right, but she didn't know anything about any of these issues, I don't think.
I noticed that she changed, she flipped her mind on where to stay.
I think there are 2 questions on the parking. One is that a good spot for, first, is there a real need for temporary parking on site, given the very limited amount of space that's available to the school for PE? If there is, that may be the best site for it, but it's subject to an additional consideration, is does it fit in?
And they're trying
the
to
general,
make up that 50 spaces on.
Right, and they'll never make up the whole 50. And of course, cynically, if I wanted to be cynical, I would say the large grading plan and the removal of the trees freed up a lot more space than would be available if you went in and did parking outside the drip line and left the trees present. And then that could be the reason for the resistance. If I wanted to be cynical, I would say that that was what was driving it. I prefer to think that it's just not been carefully looked at from a tree preservation perspective by APS. Actually, that could easily be the case. It could easily be that the civil engineer never was even told or asked to preserve those trees and was told that they were gone, and that was that. So I think we want to preserve those trees, and if it results in fewer parking spaces on there, Robin, they just have to do with fewer parking spaces. And if there's a separate question of whether it makes any sense to put the entrance to that lot, which would be on Green Cove, right there where the school buses stack up as they depart for about 30 minutes as they come down Green Cove and fight to make a left turn onto Virginia. And you couldn't get it, it would be almost impossible to get in and out of that parking lot anyway, unless of course you went left, back left on Green Cove and up to Clemont, fought your way the wrong way. This is the last area that needs any more deliberate introduction of traffic, it seems to me. And so that discussion needs to occur. But you know what? There's months and months to do that. This won't be an issue. It won't take long to do all that work if that's what they decide they need to do. This is some months away. Nothing's changing during this school year. So there's adequate time for this discussion, is my point of view, and for it to occur in a logical way with the entire community, and they can hear from the neighbors a wee little bit. There's one element I've left out of that, which is Mr. Westmoreland. So y'all saw the note that I circulated about Matt. When all this happened, my immediate thought was, what's changing here? Because things seem very different in this equation than they did when we met. So I wrote and had a talk with Matt about whether or not the trailers are going. I was just reminding him that that's the premise. The trailers are going. That's the two-pronged premise. He said that has not changed at all.
That's a lot of land.
And, well, no, that's supposed to be returned to field space, and they will still not have an adequate field space after they get all 3 fields in place. But nonetheless, that is indeed what's going to happen. And y'all saw the note that I circulated to all of y'all, and Matt saw it first. I sent it to Matt and asked him to make sure that he was comfortable with the wording, and he was, and I had his email to that effect. He's seen it, he approves of it. He and the superintendent, he avers, believe both are firm that those trailers will come out at the completion of the renovation. Somebody pointed and cynically said, oh, new ones will come right back in. I haven't addressed that with Matt, but I think Matt is pretty straightforward. I think he knows how that would be regarded, and I'm not going to blame that. So that's it, that's my motion, is I ask that we support an appeal on those trees. It needs to be in by Wednesday. I want to get it in tomorrow afternoon, because I'm away Wednesday, and that'll give us a little bit of time. It'll come up in a few weeks, it won't be long. So it can allow us to put some pressure on them. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Yes, ma'am.
What is the actual number of trees that are being appealed? Because they have to be done one by one.
Yes, ma'am. We listed them one by one on the letter I sent to the board, which I hoped would get up today, but it didn't, on our website. I have the letter there. If you'll hand me that pile, that folder down there, David, right to your right there, this folder.
I have it right here if it's.
Oh, okay. It's okay, she's got it. Yes, we listed them one by number, by their site number that they have. Additionally, the arborist that came today said it might be possible to do a resistograph on a 1 DDH tree that's up on the hill and maybe save that. That's not a certainty, and I'm not certain of it. We mentioned trees number 17, 18, 20, 21, 22, and 23. Hang on. 24, which is the parking lot tree, and 17 and 18, which I only listed here separately and asked them to provide a specific reason. Those are the ones along Virginia. No reason has been provided, and we will appeal those as well. So it's actually, it is 1, 2, 3, 6, 7 really. 7 trees that we're appealing. Virtually every tree on that hill, and 5 big ones on that hill, and 2 on Virginia. Which they total in inches, 165 inches. And it would inadvertently, it will have a huge impact on the water that stays there. Trees suck up water badly. It will destabilize that hill. And sure enough, I think if you're going to cut all those trees down, you better spend a whole lot of money on stormwater control. But if they left them, I think they would have fewer trees to replace and less stormwater to worry about. And the gentleman that came today was a professional in this and thought there were many options, including, to no one's surprise here, some flow wells that we have grown to be we're commonly seeing everywhere now as folks try to suck up water on the spot. So that's it. I also ask that the board give me latitude if I misnumbered, obviously, or missed a tree in that list, that I will correct it, but that is virtually all of it. And it's the trees on the hill that are being impacted and the 2 along Virginia that I think are a direct result of dealing with the stormwater that's caused by this. So are there any questions, please?
I have just a
Please.
procedural question. What is the technical language? It's a motion to appeal the tree removal permit? How do you exactly describe it?
You can find it on if you'll Google Atlanta Tree Conservation Commission, the appeal form is there. We're appealing, we're going to be arguing that the plan, the approval to grant the plan was inappropriate. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the language, because there's an alternate plan that could be composed that would save the trees. The opening language in the ordinance says that the intent of the goal is to save the maximum number of trees possible. I'll be frank, if this plan remains as it exists, they have a viable reason to cut all these trees down. So our goal, our object is to buy some time with the appeal, which we will certainly pursue in perfect good faith if that's where we wind up. But the other goal is to spend the interim weeks trying to ask APS, first the construction services group, to take it off the list. If they do not, and I anticipate that they will not, then we will go to Matt and the superintendent and ask them or the board to take it off the list. And it may or may not occur, but I don't know what else I think we're in a spot where that's the only thing we can do.
So,
And, yes, sir.
question. So at the meeting from yesterday, are individual citizens also filing appeals? Is that likely?
Yes, I think that there will be a citizen or 2 who may appeal the trees around the Clemont parking lot where the active construction is.
So
Once
we're
it-
gonna appeal the hill ones also.
Well, I think if we do, they may not, but they might. They might do that too. I think that there's a very weak argument on the piece around there. We're now 0 for 4 on arbors who have opined on this. And, but I think we have some, I don't want to put a lot of false faith in the Tree Conservation Commission. This has not historically been a group that was inclined to challenge authority. So we'll have to do our very best, but I do think we're quite sincere about the arguments. The process inside the school system is broken and is very flawed. It needs to be revised and it needs to come off the list while that's going on. And if it doesn't, we'll proceed. We'll see what happens if it doesn't.
Jim,
Yes,
what
ma'am.
were the 4 points that Mark Arnold raised? You know, moving forward, did you write those down?
Well, I don't recall.
All of them.
But I thought they were basically that that the logic of our approach was solid on the appeal, that we should A, appeal the trees, B, appeal to the school board to remove the trees, 3, argue that the softball field, that no one had dreamed of designing the kind of softball field for any other thing other than the Inman Middle School. I will tell you that one of the things that was said in my conversation with the project director was that they had to think of other schools here, and I reacted poorly to the suggestion, saying that while we believed in supporting this school and we believed that what facilities they had could be used for lots of folks, that didn't mean that designing for other schools needed to drive the design of this school. That if there's an auditorium there that can be used for a purpose, that's fine, but don't tear up the neighborhood for another school. That's a different matter. And
They want it to be a shared resource.
yeah, I think Grady got mentioned,
Yeah, yeah.
and we.
Actually, I thought about that too, you know, that if they have a softball team at the middle school level, that they also have one at the high school level, and because the high school has, you know, I mean, well, you will go around that block, there's no there's no field resource there.
Well, that's all right. I told her that I felt that was clearly not what this was being talked about as a neighborhood amenity, which is why neighborhood design dollars would go into it that would also benefit the school. But if we had to make that choice, we'd be happy not to have a competitive softball field over at Inman, and it was not worth destroying half a dozen, 160 inches of trees to get that. That was outrageous. And so, look, they're the school board. We know that they don't have to design for us, but all I can say is I think we have to go through the steps piece by piece with Matt, who has promised to support us in this so far. And if that doesn't work, we'll move on to the next step of the discussion.
Clarified question.
Yes, ma'am.
It sounded like they weren't designing for the softball field itself, that would be the final product, but that they would instead be designing for this temporary parking lot that they needed during construction to pave that space where the softball field is now.
I think we had to agree to disagree on that point, because I suggested that I thought it was astonishing that this very large design, which had not been done under any of the criteria that anybody had ever talked about in the process, just happened to accommodate, as it turned out, a parking lot that no one had ever talked about in the process. And that in the process we're losing 6 or 7 huge trees, which would tremendously alter the schoolscape in the neighborhood. And that was, I didn't say anything was impossible, but that's what process was for. When you design, that's exactly what a neighborhood process was for. That's what we have this exact committee for. And that it was unbelievable that this had all been inserted since May and never a meeting of the committee that was specifically in place to handle exactly these issues. So we'll raise those points tomorrow if they do not prevail, and I wouldn't be amazed if they didn't prevail inside construction services, including our offer and belief that we have their professional ways, by the way, to deal with the stormwater. If they do want to park cars there, they just won't be able to park as many, Robin, as I think they're thinking about if they knock the tree down. I don't know, they get 50 in there no matter what. So I think that to have that drive, to have 3 or 4 or 8 more or 10 more parking places drive the loss of 6 or 7 huge trees is absurd. For a temporary use is absurd. And if they don't agree, they cannot agree. There's plenty of time to talk this over in the next year, because plenty of time to design, see if we can design an appropriate feel there and to review what appropriate means if there's some question about it. Plenty of time.
Sounds like a little bit that someone realized they were losing those parking places off Clement, and they're just kind of trying to sneak them back in, right? Trying to sneak them, recreate them in another place. Because, I mean, if they're doing pavement, I mean, no one's gonna take up pavement.
No, they swear they will, but I don't disagree with you. I'm as cynical about that as you are, although I think they would be under astonishing pressure not to when they get their real parking lot back. But here's the question for you. If you believe that, you might think that parking had been on their mind from the get-go. Maybe perhaps an early design might have had parking where the trailers are, which it did. Which was removed at the neighborhood request. That was never there. The trailers were to leave, it was to be green space.
So
And
then
they
they
moved
lost
it.
that parking.
They took the, yeah.
Where they were gonna put in the trailers, and they were looking, well, it's not going there, where's it going?
Well, it couldn't, they weren't, see, that wouldn't work for construction, because the trailers are staying during construction. It would have to, that was gonna be a post-construction piece, and we objected instantly. That wasn't the plan, that wasn't the agreement, that wasn't anything. Where did that come from? I think they said, we thought you would like it. And I said, okay, I appreciate the offer. I'll be glad to ask the neighbors. The neighbors I reported, with Lola and I went back and had another meeting with them. 100%, they did not like it, and it was dropped. So I'm not convinced they're gonna plan to leave it there, but I don't even want to hinge the argument on that, because that means it's okay to do it now as long as we take it out at the end. It's not okay to do it now. It's okay to park there with gravel if you get outside the critical root zone. And even that is problematic, as I mentioned before, and it needs to have process that goes into it.
I think this has covered most
Okay.
everything from the meeting last time too, which was where Wendy had asked about Mark. His was appeal the trees. We do not want parking there. Let's have a discussion about why the parking is there and what we can help to do to alleviate whatever problem you're trying to solve. And to discuss the fence further. I think those were the 4 things.
That's right, the fence was the last thing there, I agree. What would become of a alleged possible fence around the thing? That is, it does not appear to be drawn on any plans yet. And it did occur to us, just so y'all know, that we didn't want the area fenced off, or if it were to be fenced off, only a small area to be fenced off. And it occurred to us that the best way to be effective in that was to be intimately involved in the design of that. And that was one of our unspoken. That didn't mean we were going to get our way. When we were going to slip in what that was going to happen, it was all going to be reviewed by APS, but at least we could get the topic clearly on the table. And now so it's frustrating.
I shared with you my opinion about the liability associated with 20 to 30 unleashed dogs running around in that corner lot. It's a major problem. When they talk about them using that, the reason they don't want that area fenced off is that they're using that for an illegal off-leash dog park. You go by there any afternoon, there's 20 to 30 unleashed dogs running around there.
And of course, they would say that's not their only concern. They want their children to be able to walk through there, but I mean, they propose that we live here, we support the school, we do have a lot of inconveniences because of the school. Yes, it was here, but also all this green space that our kids enjoy and have grown up. We moved here enjoying. They know they don't own it, but they see it as, you know, a little bit of an appeasement for what they suffer through the traffic and construction and air handlers and all of that.
That's right. Jennifer offered bravely in the face of some fact that, in fact, this community was anything but 100% united against the expansion of that school, regardless of what you think of the long-range strategy of the cluster, that there was a ton of support in this neighborhood for that expansion. And that our argument wasn't based on long-range strategy. though that was bracketed in
We weren't
there.
trying to rebring out, let's decide where to put the middle
Right.
school.
So those issues all came back out. They've never come to peace, and they never will until somebody at APS has the courage to look history in the face and do something about it. And of course, it is a little more complicated because if indeed Druid Hills winds up in the city of Atlanta, it's not clear, but it would come with two schools, too small to be middle schools, perfectly adequate as elementary schools. And the school around here right now, if you could turn it into a middle school quickly, is Morningside. And that's already been spotted by alert and analysts here on the parent side. I'm just saying what I've heard. So we tried not to go down that rabbit hole last night. So that's it. We have a motion, and is there any more discussion of it? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thanks very much. And that concludes the report. Ms. Keenan, the NPU, we have an NPU report here for us, I think.
Oh, sorry, I do. Yes, at the last NPU meeting, a request for a land use change was heard. It's a land use change for the Oak Knoll Apartments. What are the cross sections, Debbie? What are the streets?
Montgomery, Ferry, and Piedmont.
Okay, so that Oak Knoll apartment complex, they had a proposed land use change that would have resulted in not just one level of upzoning, but 2 levels of upzoning. The MPU meeting was the largest one I've seen from my 6 years as secretary, plus all my involvement in the Beltline. There was standing room only. And there was tremendous resistance and opposition to the proposed land use change. And the policy reasons that were cited were that it's always been the position of the NPU to preserve the underlying land use designations in the CDP. And this would be a complete aberration because, again, it wouldn't be going just one level up in land use, it would be going 2 levels up and changing the type of development that would be allowed under the CDP. And there was also concern expressed about the precedent that this would have, that if the CDP could be abandoned in this parcel, and again, not just 1 level up, but 2 levels up, what precedent does that set for abandoning the CDP in other parcels? So the bottom line is the vote was maybe about 80%, maybe 85%.
146 to 36.
Okay, so the vote was 146 against the requested change, 36 in favor. The former chair, Jane Rawlings of the NPU, drafted a letter to some people who had questions about the meeting and the decision and the vote, and her letter really succinctly and very clearly outlined all of the policy arguments against the proposed upzoning and how the NPU vote and the NPU reaction was consistent with NPU policy and NPU precedent. And again, there's just been a long-standing tradition and policy of opposing these types of requests to the CDP, to the land use. At the planning committee voted to make a statement in support of the NPU vote and have a statement in support of the NPU's
Of the principles that underlay the actual motion, which was in opposition to changes in the CDP for specific variant change, specific zoning changes, and to uphold the sanctity and use of the CDP.
Our planning committee did that, or the
Yeah,
planning
our
committee
plan-
where the?
Our planning
where
committee
the-
recommended that this board go ahead and endorse it as it goes to the Bureau of Zoning Adjustment for, the zoning